Well, hello, freedom seekers. I'm running just about 3 minutes late, it looks like. Sorry about that. When I'm in California, I use a microphone that is plugged into the USB port on my computer. And I then use the camera that's built into my laptop computer. And that all works really well for doing these videos. Well, of course, I share that microphone with Kat in California. She uses it quite often for things that she does. And so, for I then am not in California now. I am in Seattle, Washington. And so I left that microphone there. And when I went to go live tonight, the microphone on my computer was not registering. I have no idea why. Tried several different settings and adjustments, and so I then went and grabbed these headphones because I use these with my oftentimes my Zoom meetings, and where I'm both listening and talking sometimes, and so they seem to work just fine. No idea, but I'll get that resolved for another time. But wanted to make sure, of course, you could hear me, and I appreciate your being here with me tonight. And I generally will spend about the first 5 or 6 minutes just kind of chatting a little bit before I really get into things. Spend that 5 to 6 minutes just to allow people time to go ahead and jump on board, because I think that then when people subscribe to the channel and click on the little bell, then they get sent a notification that says, hey, Non-Monogamous Mark is live. And so if you haven't subscribed yet, then if this is your first time seeing me, please don't make a quick decision just to jump on and subscribe with it being your first time in seeing me, unless you feel like it's something what you really want to do. But come back, and watch and listen some more, or watch and listen to some other videos that I've made, and then make your decision as to whether you want to subscribe. Now, if you do end up subscribing, I'll give you a little clue as to some things that are in the works. I don't have a timeline on them, but they are in the works, and that we are. I do that right now. I do this weekly wrap up report on Monday evenings. Usually try to get it started between 8 and 8:30, but I'm going to start making some good solid content for you as well, because I really want to help you as my audience. I want to help you to create a life that you absolutely love, having more sex with more people more often. And so in helping you to create that, then I want to put some videos out. And so if you have any questions or struggles or challenges that you encounter, feel free to drop me a note. There's my email address down there in the description box. And so feel free to drop me a note, an email, and let me know what kind of challenges and difficulties that you have in your life in being able to enjoy having more sex with more people more often. And there's three components to that. And of course, having more sex, you can have more sex just having more sex with yourself. That's why then we have the second component of having more sex with more people. And of course, if you're in a relationship with one person, then you could just be having more sex with that one person. And if you're monogamous, then that's fine. Or maybe you're not wanting to be monogamous anymore, and that's why you come up and watch my videos, so that I'm helping you to get some little tips each week of moving your needle forward and living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. So then you can have more sex with more people. And then after having more sex with more people, then the next thing is how to have more sex with more people more often. And during this time of COVID-19, that's been a little challenging for some people. And I just really feel sorry for the people that are single, and living with family or living on their own or living with, a bunch of people they're not having sex with. And then COVID hits, and they, some of them are just getting desperate and doing desperate things to be able to go out and have sex. There's also couples that don't live together that are not able to have sex, and it increases everybody's risk of exposure when and if they were to get together. And so, how do you have more sex with more people more often? And we've dealt with that, not so much in the videos here, but through our email list, in that I put out an email about how to have, an email about, for instance, one of the things in having more sex with more people more often is safe sex practices and guidelines and standards become very important. And so with that, then I put out information about safe sex practices, standards, and guidelines. But then also more recently through my emails, I put out information about safe COVID-19 sex guidelines. And it's something that I put a lot of thought into, and they're not anything that I dictate. That's what you need to do, because I believe in everybody's ability and right to live their life as they choose, as long as then the people that they choose to live their life with are all in consent and agreement with that. And so that means that, just because something is what a standard that I set for myself for a safe sex standard, or for a standard of what I set for myself for safe COVID-19 sex and with people, that those standards that I put for myself are very high. And so I talked about those in my emails. If you subscribe to my email list, and if you haven't, then get subscribed. But I talk to them in my emails and that I send out. And so then you can, I give you what my standards are, and it's only given to you because hopefully it becomes a talking point and thinking point for you to really kind of figure out what standards and guidelines and practices are you going to set and keep in order to keep yourself safe and healthy, whether you're talking about COVID-19 or whether you're talking about safe sex practices. Okay, well, with that then, it's now 7 minutes in, so let's go ahead and get the evening's information and material going. And I'm going to switch to my other screen where I can share my document with you then. Just a moment, please. Okay, this is the weekly wrap-up video report with my freedom seekers, and what we work to do each week is to help you to transform your life and so you can transition and thrive living an ECNM life of your choosing. And an ECNM life is all focused on having more sex with more people more often. And that sex is really a good thing. And having sex with more people is a good thing. And having sex with more often with a lot more people is a good thing. As long as you do it responsibly, and and then we all start to come to an understanding that we are sexual beings. And there's nothing wrong with being a sexual being. Sex is good. And it's part of what I feel is the simple pleasures of life. I like to live a simple life, not a life that's complicated, and not a life that gets hectic. And my life gets hectic sometimes, and sometimes I complicate my own life. And that's not the way I always want to live, though. I want to live just a really enjoyable, simple life. The simple life that I am increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in my life. And that's what we have as a goal for helping you with as well, is increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your life by having more sex with more people more often. And so the topic I really wanted to talk about tonight, you see, is then taking the next step. And in that, one of the things that I mention every week here is that right now I'm transitioning my life and also transforming my life from having an income where it's time dependent. I'm trading my time for dollars, to being able to have an income that's more passive and that is ongoing and is online. So then I can travel and I can then just create and keep my income going from anywhere in the world with very little effort. And so that's what I'm working to do. That's the transition and the transformation that's going on in my life. And in order to do that, then I figured out that really I'm using the very same steps that I use in transitioning and transforming my monogamous marriage after 27 years of living a monogamous marriage and having never had sex with anybody but that one woman in my whole life, because we were virgins when we got married. And so after 27 years, then we transitioned our relationship so we had an open marriage. And we enjoyed 6 years of having an open marriage. And I go into details about that in other videos. But we had great success living our open marriage. In fact, I'm here in Seattle, and my partner Chris here in Seattle. She became at a point. She became my third girlfriend, I believe it was. And I was married. Yes, I was married, and I had 3 girlfriends. And I remember my wife went on vacation, and she then went on vacation with a girlfriend of hers, and so was gone for 2 weeks. And before she left, because I had just ended a relationship and that I had been in for a year. And so, the way that I figured to resolve that is to have more relationships. And I very often have had 2 or 3 relationships at a time besides my wife. And so I went out before she left on her vacation. I went out and she went on a first date with me with this woman who had never heard of non-monogamy, polyamory. She's kind of familiar with a little bit or heard of swinging, but had never done any swinging. She'd always been monogamous. And so I, talked to her about it, and then I gave her the option that she could meet me for our first date, or she could meet me and my wife. And so she went ahead and decided to go. It'd be kind of nice so we meet my wife as well. And she wasn't bi; she was straight. And so we had our first date, and she met my wife and I. And at the end of the date, a little conversation took place, and my wife then took the car home. And this woman that I had the first date with, and I went and continued our date at a hotel. And then we started to seeing each other very regularly. My wife then came and picked me up the next morning at the hotel, since she left with a car that we had arrived in, and said, "Well, how was your night?" I told her it was a wonderful night. I had a lot of fun and a very nice time. And so I started to date that gal, and then I went to a swingers party about a week later. It was at the end of that week, in fact, and went to a swingers party and met another gal that I then started to date. And then I had met this gal online through a swingers group, and she and I said, "Well, let's go to the swingers party together that they were having." And that was a week later. And so then she and I started a relationship, and that is Chris. She and I have now been in our relationship together for 11 years. And before my wife passed away, Chris became very close friends, good friends with my wife. And after Chris and I started to date, she rented the house that came available for rent right next door to where my wife and I lived. And so she moved into the house there with her 5-year-old son, and then lived right next door. And she had never been involved in non-monogamy before, but she figured, her ex-husband, her not ex, but her late husband, her husband had died, and her late husband, he cheated on her, and she knew what that felt like. But she thought, well, as long as it's all honest, ethical and consensual, then why not give it a try? And so here we are 11 years later. And I'm enjoying now being in Seattle, spending time with Chris. And so, what I want to talk then about taking that next step. Because so oftentimes people really don't have conscious thought about what the next step is going to be and what they're going to do. And So that's what I want to talk tonight about, is taking that next step, because it's so important for me and what I'm doing. That is part of the process. That it was part of the process of when I transitioned my 27-year monogamous relationship into an open marriage, was taking that next step and know what that next step was be. Now, at some point, there was a point that came where that next step was to take a year break from talking about having a non-monogamous relationship, open relationship with my wife, because she needed time to let things kind of sink in and kind of get around in her mind a little bit and work some things out. Because otherwise, we would have just been pounding away at each other, confronting each other, and having conflict. Now, the year of time was something that she asked for, a year, 12 months. And I went ahead and honored that, and I gave her then 1 year where we didn't talk about an open marriage or me having more sex or her having more sex or with other people and things like this. And so we just took for a year then. That was our step, but it was something that we both agreed on. It wasn't something that, okay, yeah, I'll just kind of pull back from now. No, it was something that we had both talked about and then agreed, okay, then let's take it the next year, 12 months, to just kind of cool off a little bit. We can all do our own thinking about it, and then we'll come back after the year is up and we'll start talking about it again. And that was very helpful, because then when we came back a year later, she had spent that year just processing things. I mean, we'd been married for 27 years, and I kind of knew that she needed that time. And so well, at that point, it was 25 years we'd been married when we took that 1 year to let her process things. And then that year later, it allowed me to kind of reassess and put together some plans, some game plans, what my steps would be. And so then I wasn't going to run this race alone. I was going to run this race with my wife. And so then after 12 months, I communicated with her what those steps I felt could be for us. And I then went through, talked about them one at a time. Would you agree to do this? And those steps are not steps that I'm going to talk about here, because that's part of my coaching program. If you feel like that you need some help with this, then send me an email. My email address is down there in the description box. So click on that in that box, the down arrow there, so you can see my email address, and then send me an email, and we can talk more about my coaching program. But I had outlined steps, because there weren't just steps that I thought of by myself. I had already spent, before I ever broached my wife about an open marriage, I had spent 2 years researching on the internet. And in those days, all we really had was Yahoo groups or bulletin boards. And so I did a lot of research, and that was my homework that I had done. And so then that year that my wife and I spent just not bringing the topic up, then for her was processing things, and for me it was really sorting out then what my steps were going to be. So then when we started then talking about having an open marriage, then what we talked about was we wanted to see if we could get agreement on the steps that we might take. And so there was those steps. I started out, I said, well, would you have any objection to us taking this step as our first step? And she thought about that, and well, no, I suppose we could at least do that. And then I said, okay, well then, then the next step after that would be this step. Would you have any objection? Because we're not having sex with anybody, we're just getting information. It's all we are doing, so that we can have the information as a couple to be able to talk about things, so that we can actually talk about it and not just get all defensive and feel insecure and these kinds of things, but we can get some information to be talking about these things. And so then I proposed the second step, because yeah, we could do that. And then I proposed a third, a fourth, and a fifth. There were 5 steps in the program, and I proposed all 5 of them. And none of them had anything that, I mean, they were all steps to take. You know, step number 6 would be then we'd be able to be free to have sex with other people, you know, and I'd have her consent for me to have sex with other people, and she'd have my consent for her to have sex with other people. And so it was a process. There were 6 steps, and the 6th step was then the consent step. And so, you know, that's where then I want to ask you again, then talk about taking the next step. You see, because last week I drove up from Ventura to here in Seattle. And in driving up from Ventura to Seattle, you know, I thought I'm going to stop along the way and see some things that I haven't seen before. And so I got some literature out and so forth, did a little bit of research. And one of the things that I decided to do was go to Lassen Volcanic National Park. I mean, I never even knew there was a Lassen Volcanic National Park. And but there is. And last March, I got my lifetime pass for the national parks, because I really love going to the national park. And so I got my lifetime pass. You have to be 62 years old to do that, and then you pay $80, and you can get into any national parks for free. And like when I've gone camping on the national forest lands, instead of $20 a night for the campsite, it was $10 a night. So I got a discount then. And but like getting into the national park, it's $30, and I've now been in the national park, one in twice now in California, but different national parks in California. But so last week I went to Lassen Volcanic National Park. Now I didn't have a lot of time because I was in that drive to Seattle, and so I knew I didn't have a lot of time, and to go through the park from what they call the north entrance, northwest entrance to from the southwest entrance, and then drive to the northwest entrance. It takes, they say, allow about 4 hours. Well, and I wanted to stop and see some things, and one of the things I've been wanting to go on some hikes. Earlier this year, part of my goals for my fitness was to take and get in 30 hikes this year. And then COVID hit, and that really slowed things down because they were kind of isolated home for several months. But I'm trying to get in more hikes now, and when I can, when it's safe. And so I went on this hike at Lassen Volcanic National Park, and I just read the description of the hike, and it said a difficult hike, and I'm down for a difficult hike, and that there are usually rated easy, moderate, difficult, extreme, things like that. And it said it was a difficult hike, and it was about 1.5 miles one way, and then 1.5 miles back down. And that 1.5 miles was a gain of over 1,000 feet in elevation. So that added to the difficulty because there's just a very steep climb. And then also the terrain itself was not always that easy to manage as well. And so it was a difficult hike, and I took off, and because I was pressed for time, and so I just took off and figured, well, it's only 1.5 miles. I can do this quickly. About a half mile in, I was wore out. I could not believe how wore out I got in that half mile. But like I said, it was a difficult hike. It was a very steep terrain, and so I came to that point of having to, think, okay, what am I going to do? And I decided that I would slow down, but I would be sure to be taking that next step. Because even when you're hiking like that, it's important to keep your motion moving forward. And that's the same thing with what I'm doing with transitioning my income from trading time for dollars to an income where it's online and ongoing. And so, there's steps that I'm taking. And so take that next step. And when I was on that hike, I had to stop and say, okay, I don't want to just stop, but I want to just keep going. Even if I'm going a little slower, I want to keep going and take the next step. And that's also what's working for me with all the things I'm having to learn and things I'm doing with transitioning my income to an online income, because I've never been a computer nerd. I have a lot of challenges and struggles when it comes to technology and computers, but it's getting better because I mean now the people that are where I used to be, they would think that boy, he's really a techie guy. He's really smart with all this tech stuff, you know, and because it's just stuff you have to learn. You know, some people are more naturally adept to it than others are. And I think people that are older, I'm 52 years old, unless you picked up technology, you know, in the last 20 years, you became adept at technology, you know, or 20 or 30, even 30 years, you started getting on the computer and stuff, you know, and I basically have done what I've had to do and done minimally what I had to do when it came to technology. And so now, yeah, some people might say that I'm kind of a tech wizard, but I really feel like I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm learning a lot all the time. And I'm doing that because I'm taking the next step all the time. But one of the things with taking that next step, though, is that I found it really helpful to have a coach. I have a teacher, a coach, and a mentor in this e-commerce business that I'm building, where I'm building these online stores. And so, and I meet with my trainer and my coach every week. My mentor is one-on-one. I can meet with him 5 days a week if I have the time, or if I have things where I'm kind of hung up on something and need a little more help, then I can meet with that person to give me hands-on, one-on-one help. And so that's been very helpful for me in taking the next step. You know, so that leads me to the next item here, and that is, what do you do when you can't seem to move forward? Have you ever been there? How about in your non-monogamous life? Have you ever gotten to that place where either you are living a monogamous life and you don't want to live a non-monogamous life anymore? What do you do when you can't move forward? Or maybe you've been cheating, you know, like this guy that I'm coaching right now. You've been cheating like he has been, and you know, it's like he doesn't want to. But he and his wife are churchgoers and very religious, and he just doesn't know how to move forward and do it ethically and consensually. And maybe you find that you're kind of in that same spot, and that's where coaching really comes in to be helpful. And the coaching will help you to take and reframe, first of all, and that is kind of look at things a little differently, because a coach can see things that you can't see. And so is able to help provide you some input to start to redo some reframing. And then once you do the reframing, then you can start to do the transformation, and then you get to liberation. And so I mentioned that process, a three-step process that we use in our coaching, mentioned it before here on these videos, and that is reframe, transformation, and then liberation. But yeah, sometimes then it's really helpful to be able to take and have a coach. And we offer that kind of service. Again, just email us if you want to know more about that. But so I have a coach then, but you know, sometimes still though, how do you take the next step when you're really stuck? And you know, you just can't seem, you know, what the problem is you know it's yourself. You've caused yourself to get stuck, and it's like, how do I get out of this? You know, I just really feel stuck. Maybe, you know, you're in a monogamous relationship and you got kids at home, you got a wife at home, and everything is monogamous, but you're no longer happy in a monogamous relationship. And you just feel stuck. You've got bills, and you got a house maybe, or a mortgage together, or apartment together, and all these things, and you just feel stuck. How do you take the next step when you are stuck? I have been there. And I have been there many times throughout my life, you know, and I guess the first thing that I would say there is that how to take the next step when you're stuck is to make sure that you are clear on where you want to go, and keep your focus on where you want to go, because so often we start putting our focus on where we are, and that just creates stress and anxiety. But by keeping your focus on where you're wanting to go and what you're wanting to create in your life, then that helps you to just be thinking mentally. This is what I call the transformation process, where internally you are transforming your life. You're transforming your thoughts from the reframing that you've done. Maybe that the next step is simply to get more information, to do some research online. I told you that before I ever went to my wife and suggested that we have an open marriage, that I spent 2 years doing a lot of research by chatting with people on Yahoo groups and also researching on bulletin boards. And so that was my next step. And then I finally got to a point where I just said, okay, I cannot just keep intellectualizing this thing forever. I've got to take another step that's going to move me forward in wanting to have more sex with more people more often. And so the next step with moving forward then is to start talking with my wife. And so maybe that's your next step, and because you can't just keep studying this thing to death. The government's really good at that, but you don't want to be good at that. You want to be an action taker, and you want to get studied and get the information that you need to know, and so that you can know what your steps that you want to take are going to be. And it's either that, you can do it on your own, or you can hire a coach. Again, happy to help you with that in hiring my coaching services. But taking that next step when you're stuck. So the first thing is to make sure that you're really clear on where you want to go. And I'd say that this is what you want to do: have more sex with more people more often. Just keep that right there in your mind all the time. That's where you want to go, because obviously you're not doing that now. And maybe even you already have an open relationship. Maybe it's a polyamorous relationship. And I know the first woman that I ever had sex with, once my wife and I opened our marriage, she had been with her husband. She'd been a swinger for about 8 years. And so we really had met online and hit it off really, really well. And she lived in a city about 2 hours from me. But it was a city that I was in every week on business. And so it was not going to be any problem to be able to enjoy time with her and maybe have a relationship with her. And then I really wanted to have a relationship with a woman. I didn't want to just have sex with a woman. And that's just one of my personal preferences. Some of the people, they just want the sex. And that's one of the big differences between polyamory and swinging. And for me, then, I wanted to have a connection, a relationship. I had women that wanted to have sex with me because I was such a novelty. I'd been married 27 years and only ever had sex with one woman. And because I spent 2 years online in these groups, on Yahoo groups, talking about my situation and learning what I could learn. And so a lot of people, apparently, I found out, were tracking me, a lot of women, and they were kind of then thinking, I'd like to have sex with him. And because it'd be like having sex with a virgin, And but in this case, I knew really what I was doing because of things that I also went through in my marriage, that I really knew what I was doing when it came to having sex. And so, then I had a lot of women approach me and wanting to have sex with me. But I didn't want to have sex with them because that's all they wanted. They just wanted a piece of meat. That's how I felt anyway. And I wanted a connection with a woman. And so that was my personal preference. That was all. And so, but I wanted to have more sex with more people more often. And I kept that in focus. And that's why then when things weren't going well with my wife and I, when I first brought this all up, then, I said, well, what can we do? And we ended up working out that maybe we can try just taking 12 months just to cool off and not talk about this anymore. And then in a year, we start talking about it again. And so that was then where, keep that focus on what I wanted. And I want to have more sex with more people more often. So make sure that you're clear on that. And then work out your steps. And you can work out the steps by just asking lots of questions, being really involved. Don't be a a fly on a wall, but get in some internet groups and just be gathering information, just soak up information, and spend anywhere from 2 to 10 hours a week doing that, soaking up information and asking questions and being fully transparent about where your life is at. That's another part of this process, is you have to be clear about where you're at, because if you, like a GPS system in your phone, the only way it can help you to get where you want to go is by being clear where it's at right now. And so you've got to be clear where you're at, and you got to be transparent with other people as well. And so, then know the steps, and then you just take the next step. It's like, as I was on that hike then, and after a half a mile, I wore myself out, went too fast on that first half mile. And I just said, okay, well, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep taking the next step. So I hope that was helpful to you. And one of the things that I'm doing here in Seattle, and I want to share with you, let me see if I can share another screen with you, just a moment. Okay, I'm going to try to share a different screen with you. And one of the things that I'm excited for here in Seattle, here we go. Okay, well, there it is. You see, I had a business for over 20 years where I spent, for 15 years, I spent 46 weeks of the year, no, 42 weeks of the year traveling on the road. I set up a booth at home shows, fairs, festivals, consumer events, and I then introduced people to my products. I had a sales crew. Sometimes they were with me. Sometimes they were doing other events as well. And then I had people running my company back at the office, taking care of everything for me. And so I would take and then be traveling all the time. And I started out by going and being in hotels and motels all the time. And that got expensive, because you go through a lot of money when you're out on the road that much. And 42 weeks of the year. And then I was home on the average of 1 to 2 days every week, though. And but then I'd be gone and on the road again. And so then doing the hotels, after a while, then I decided it was time to get a travel trailer. So I got a travel trailer, and then wore that poor thing down, and I was in staying in hotels again. And I wore the travel trailer down because when I go out and set up my booth at these events, I take about 3,000 pounds worth of merchandise with me. And I had a 1-ton van, and I then towed the travel trailer, and I'd load that travel trailer full, and I'd load the van full, and sometimes it was even 4,000 pounds. And so I then learned that people in that was kind of doing things like I was doing at these events, like I was doing, that they all tell you, don't buy a gas-powered motorhome, because you will burn those motors out and transmissions out, and there'll be nothing but constant trouble for you. And so I started looking around as to then what would be a good kind of a motorhome. And I was told and started learning about buses. And so the more I learned about that, then the more impressed I became. And the thing is that everything I was looking at was started at $80,000 and went up from there. And these were not new. The new ones, like marathon coaches, they run over $1 million. They start $1 million and go up from there. But these were like old Greyhound buses that people would buy when they were, Greyhound had said, well, this has been on the road enough, let's retire this bus. And then they'd go in, they'd strip out the seats, and they convert it into a motorhome. And so I was looking for an already converted Greyhound bus. Well, I finally found one, and the guy wanted $50,000 for it, and actually wanted a little more than that. And I told him I could only afford to give him $50,000 because I wouldn't buy it if I couldn't pay cash, and that's all I had available. And so I went ahead and I bought this bus. It's a 1958. It's called a GMC PD 4104. It is a classic. And so these are some recent pictures. I have it listed on Craigslist for sale right now. I'm just going to go through these photos with you real quick. That's looking, of course, from the back of the kitchen up to the front, through the front windshield. Greyhound bus, 1958. It's a classic. Anytime I'd be stopping somewhere, people always come around wanting to see my bus, and it is such a fun memory for me to have. I spent about 8 years in that bus, traveling around the Northwest, in taking care of my business, and also going on vacation. Made some trips from Seattle to Palm Springs, California, and this has so many great memories. But then came to a point where I wasn't traveling around doing those shows anymore, and so it mostly stayed parked. And then after that, I ended up getting in a car accident. Wasn't my fault, and we're battling that out now, and with the insurance company. And I got in a car accident where my shoulder is injured. This bus does not have power steering, and you also have to double clutch it when you shift it, standard transmission. And so with all of that, I couldn't really drive this bus anymore, not for any length and distance, because it's a pleasure to drive, but you've got to have some muscle, and so to drive it, and I just don't have put that kind of strain on my shoulder, and I could probably do a 50-mile trip on it, but that's it. And this kind of a vehicle, 50 miles it's just a shame to put only 50 miles on that a couple of times a year. And so I finally came to the point where it's time to sell the little girl. And so it's here in Seattle. It's just been parked for years. Some deterioration has happened. And so I'm wanting to find a really nice, loving, caring owner that can do some of the, just the minor repairs that need to be done, like the rug that you see right there on the kitchen floor. Well, underneath that, the vent over in the roof has leaked, and then dripped down water right to that spot where then the plywood underneath of the flooring there has rotted through, and so that if you step there, you could actually step through to the luggage bay down below. And so what has to happen is the stove and the countertop all have to come out on that left-hand side, and then lay down new flooring, and then put the stove and countertops back in. So it'd be 2 weekends if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, and a weekend if they do know what they're doing. And but not any major process. And that's one of the major things that needs to be done, though. And so anyway, that's just like everything else that I've talked about here, that it becomes a step-by-step process as well. And last year I had this bus sold, and the gentleman that I sold it to, then he found that he couldn't, when he came to work out all the final details of it, he couldn't store it where he had planned on parking it. And the city ordinances and stuff wouldn't allow him to do that. And so that became an issue for him. And I had to head to California. And so I just parked it for another year, paid for the space that I park it at for another year, and headed to California. So here I am back now, and the bus is for sale, and I've got a bunch of people interested, and I'm kind of sad, but I'm happy to kind of take the next step in my life with all this as well. And so let's go back here then to, excuse me, finishing up here with the weekly wrap up and give you the update and of how my week went. So let's get on with that. Just a moment. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick drink before I get started on this. This usually doesn't take too long to go through, but it's my way of showing you that I'm accountable, and I'm going through these processes, these steps as well. And sometimes I go through these emotions where, it's just like, it's taking too long. Just a moment, I'm going to take a drink of water. But one of the things that today that my trainer said, not my mentor and coach, but my trainer, and that I'm doing for building the online stores, and that I have a, a mentor and a trainer. These are two different people that are working with me on helping me learn how to coach people better and helping people coach people on creating the life of their dreams. And that's what we call our magnetic mindset certification process that I'm involved in, and it's a very expensive program, and it's a 12-month program. Well, then I also then have a coach and trainer and mentor for my e-commerce business as well. And that probably yourself, you might notice that you're buying more things online now. And there's a huge, I mean, just look at what the price of Amazon stock has gone through the roof this year, you know? And I mean, Jeff Bezos he could give away, I don't think he can give his money away fast enough, but he cashed in $3.5 billion worth of his stock here a couple of weeks ago so that he could fund his space exploration business and do some cool things he wants to do there. And you know, $3.5 billion. I mean, his income went up more than that in the last month, you know? So anyway, but so what, like I've said, then just like with the things that you're working to transition, whether you're currently living a monogamous life and you want to live with a life where you're having more sex with more people more often, or maybe you're already living a polyamorous or a swinging life like the gal that I had the first lovely time with, that she was living a swinger's life, but she wanted to have a relationship where she had a connection with someone. And so that's where we got together then, because we had a good connection online. And then after we got together, her husband got jealous and says, no, you can't see him again. And because we had a good connection, and her husband felt very insecure about that. And so, you know, maybe you find yourself in that kind of a situation as well. And we have ways that we can help you. Our recoding process, what I do with my mentor in Australia that's helped me with my coaching program, we have processes that can help you to overcome whatever hurdles that you have. And so we didn't have those processes 13 years ago when I was transitioning into non-monogamy. And so the gal didn't have any choice but to say, sorry, I can't see you again. But so let's go on with the weekly report. In this past week's focus, I'm going to give myself a pass or a fail in these different categories. My top category is work and wealth. You may have one of the other categories, your top category, whatever is your most important one to be working on right now. And then my second category is sex and relationships. And my third category is my health and wellness. So let's start with the work and wealth. My first objective for last week was to continue to build my online store at thehomenudist.com. I give myself a pass. I'm not making great headways on it every week, but I am working on little steps, step by step. I'm making progress every single week on that. And one of the things that my trainer today said, he said that it's likely going to take you 6 to 12 months before you get your website where it is really ringing in the sales. And, you know, and he's just saying, this is not any get rich quick system. You got to stay with it, and you got to keep learning every week, keep applying what you're learning, keep taking those little steps every single week. And, you know, it's just like when transitioning my life from monogamy to non-monogamy. You know, it was the same thing. That those things that I sat down with after the 12 months of not talking about it, that my wife and I sat down and then we talked about the steps, and we agreed what she would be willing to do. And so, you know, those were just steps that kept us every week. We had tasks, things that she and I did each and every week that then kept us moving forward. And at that point, it was just really gathering some really good information. A lot of it was. Part of it was we had no knowledge about safe sex standards and practices. And to us, STDs were God's punishment for anybody who would have sex outside of a monogamous lifetime marriage. And so we had a lot to learn and not be fear-based, but be knowledge-based. And so we took those steps. Well, I'm taking those steps now as well. It's just I have a lot to learn in creating my online income through the online store. And it's going to take 6 to 12 months. And that's perfectly fine with me. So I give myself a pass on the first one. The second one, week 7 of 12 of magnetic mindset certification training. And that's where I have my other mentor. My mentor is in Australia, and my trainer is in, my mentor and trainer is the same person. That's in Australia. My coach, someone I meet with weekly, is in Germany. And so we obviously meet online. And so last week was week 7 of 12 of this particular portion of the program that I'm in. And so I give myself a pass. I did everything I needed to do for that. Do my lenses every day. And doing the lenses is a process because lenses help you to bring clarity. And it's a process that help us to stay aligned with the life that we desire and create and want the most. And then every day take steps to keep us moving forward. And lenses help us to keep those steps going and identify those steps and keep everything moving forward. This is a process that I learned through my coach in Australia. And it's a wonderful process. It's a process that we now use with our own coaching programs. But last week, being on the road for 3 days, I did not do my lenses every day. So I will not give myself a pass on that. Complete doing the things needed to drive to Seattle. I had a lot of stuff I had to get done there in Ventura, and I give myself a pass on that because I didn't get it all done perfectly, complete, 100% complete, but I got it all done good enough so that I could be leaving Ventura. I wanted to leave Ventura Wednesday morning, and I didn't get gone Wednesday morning. I got gone at 4 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, but I left. My goals then for the category of sex and relationships for last week. Well, my goal was to drive here to Seattle so that I'd be able to see my girlfriend and spend time with my girlfriend here in Seattle. And that I give myself a pass. I'm here, and we've enjoyed some time together, and we'll be enjoying more time together. Okay, well, then the next is for my health and wellness, and chi 3 times. And I give myself a pass on that. And that's instead of going to a chiropractor, I have a machine that it's called a chi machine, and I did that 3 times last week. That machine is in California, and so it did not come here to Seattle with me, so I won't be doing that until I get back to California again. Meditate daily. I give myself a fail on that. When I'm on the road like I was last week, it just messes me up. And so I did not get my daily meditation in. And I just finally got back to it today, and it was wonderful. Go on 3 walks. I give myself a pass on that. I did get my 3 walks in last week. Take Allergy Cocktail daily. And I give myself a fail on that as well. And then I don't have allergies like I used to have, like sinus allergies and runny eyes and stuff, but I have itchiness in my ears, which is an allergy symptom. And so I am taking these 3 essential oils that I take just 2 drops of each oil in an ounce of water and then swallow it. I do that in the morning, and that helps to eliminate, and eventually it'll make my itchy ears disappear, just like I used to be buying all the allergy pills before I started taking these essential oils. I used to buy allergy pills and everything, and I have to take those all the time because I had stuffy noses or runny noses and runny eyes and head stuffed up. And this allergy cocktail, I took it for a year without fail, and I totally got off of all the medication. I haven't been on that over-the-counter medication ever since. And so that's why I swear by this allergy cocktail. I can't tell you what it is because then I'd be prescribing, because the Food and Drug Administration will not allow me to do that. And so I just have to tell you that you have to do your own research on that, but it's truly remarkable what it did for me. So then last week, recode. I wanted to do one recode, and I give myself a fail on that as well. I did not do one recode last week, and I'll be talking more about the recode in coming weeks as well. So I want you to know a little more about that because it's one of the processes that my mentor and teacher in Australia is helping me to learn and be able to recode with other people as well. And so then my accomplishments for the week, what moved my needle forward? Did anything move your needle forward next week on helping you to get really those, we call up here at the top, the overriding desire, and go back up here to the top. This is slow. Okay, there we go. The overriding desire, whatever you have written down for your overriding desire. I have 2 items written down. I don't recommend more than 3. You can have up to 3 at maximum, but 1 is really ideal, and 2, is okay, and 3 is maximum. But then every week, what do you accomplish to move your needle forward a little bit towards getting that accomplished? And so for me, I took 3 days of alone time driving to Seattle. You see, that alone time, I don't get a lot of alone time where I'm just all by myself. Yes, I'm like, here with Chris in Seattle, she was spent Saturday with her kids on a drive. And so then I was here alone, and so there'll be times where I'll be here alone for a couple of hours, but I don't, other than that, I'm always with someone, at least every day. And so I don't spend much alone time. And that 3-day drive was really good alone time for me. And it was a lot of good thinking time. And I'll be maybe sharing more about the things with you later. But one of the things is that when I'm just really working the day by day, just working on my stuff, then oftentimes I get to where I'm lose my energy and my focus of the fact that my desire is to play big with my future desires, not just the income. Like, it's income is just a measuring device, and income just allows you to do wonderful things. I want to make $20,000 a month. I would like to make $100,000 a month, and that just allows me to do more wonderful things. And I want to do some amazing things through our nonprofit, Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, in helping people make transitions from monogamous lives to non-monogamous lives. Or if they're already living non-monogamous lives, maybe they're living it with a lot of rules and a lot of stuff that gets them stuck. And it's not really the life of their dreams necessarily. And they want to live more of an ECNM life, which is where we really work on liberating your life. And so maybe that's what you want. And so we keep you moving in that direction. But so the thinking time was good for me in refocusing me on playing big. And that's one of the things with my marketing company. Working on digital marketing with a lot of tools that I'm learning to utilize so that because it's an online world these days, and there's 12 to 15 million people today that are living an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life in the United States. And there's 30 to 40 million people sitting on the sidelines where they would probably jump in if it became socially more acceptable, which I believe by the end of this decade, that will become socially more acceptable. That's why we're setting up the Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Academy for online training, and so that we can help people be living lives that are ethical and consensual non-monogamous lives and thrive in it. So the thinking time was good. The hiking was really great. I'd already done my 3 walks during the week. I did one on Monday, did one on Tuesday, did one on Wednesday, but the hike was really good to go on. And then I also then accomplished where I know I got to get this bus sold, and last year, as I said, I just ran out of time, and so I know I got to get it sold here this year. And so I've run that ad on Craigslist, and I've I have about over 20 people that have expressed interest. And so I've gotten all of them replied to. And this week right now, I have 3 appointments where people are going to come out and see the bus. And I'm very excited to have them come out and see it. So what are the bottlenecks, breakthroughs, and bottlenecks, breakdowns, and breakthroughs? Well, I realized how easy it is to slip into working hard every day by working in and for my business instead of working on my business and having my business work for me rather than me work for it. Now, for you, because my focus right now is business stuff. For you, if you could rephrase this. You could say, well, I really realize how easy it is to slip into just going from day to day living my monogamous life and totally lose sight of wanting to have more sex with more people more often and have the life that I really dream to have. And so I just end up just working on I'm working on my life rather than having my life work for me. And that's what my goal is for you here, is to have your life work for you in all the areas, in your relationships and sex, in your work and wealth, and in your health and wellness. So then the last thing we'll wrap up here with is, what are my focuses for this coming week? On my work and wealth, I'm going to empty, clean, and fill my bus. I've been storing a bunch of stuff in it for the past year, stuff that when I moved from my house, when I sold my house, that I needed a place to store some stuff, and so I just shoved it all in the bus, and so now I can't sell the bus that way, so I've got to empty, clean, and show my bus. One of the things, I've got a coffee roaster in there, a commercial coffee grinder, and other coffee equipment. It's all commercial grade equipment that I'm going to go ahead and get that listed and sold. I don't know if I'll get it sold, but at least get it listed. So I hope to do this week. I'm going to sort and empty one tub. There's a bunch of my personal items, everything from tools to just drawers of stuff I had and boxes of stuff I had that went into these big, huge tubs, and I just put them in the bus. And so it's time to start sorting those through and getting them emptied so that I don't have to find myself needing a place to keep them. And most of the stuff, I can probably do without. So it's just letting go of it. And a lot of times that's what we have to do, is just unattach ourselves from our stuff and let go of it. So then another thing is continue to build my online store, thehomenudist.com. I'll continue to work on that this week as well. I'm going to do week 8 out of the 12-week magnetic mindset certification training. I'm going to do that. My mentor, Chris, has a 4-day live event. They're full days. He would normally come here to the United States to do this event, and he does them a couple times a year in many places throughout the world, and it's a 4-day event, and he works with his coaches and helps them be better coaches. Well, since we're not doing 4 live days, then we're doing it virtually, and because of COVID-19, and so my coach, who is in Germany, would normally be here in the United States, and my mentor and trainer, who is in Australia, would normally come in here, but we're going to do it all virtually. And isn't this technology great, though? It really is. So then I'm going to do my lenses, committing to doing my lenses every day. And so that then is what I'm committing to for my work and wealth. My sex and relationship, I'm going to get ready for a camping trip with my girlfriend, Chris, and we're going to leave, not sure quite exactly yet, but probably certainly next week. She's taking a vacation next week. Our plans were to go to Mount Zion National Park and another national park in Utah, I think, as well. But we just really keep reading about the craziness with how people in the national parks aren't wearing their mask and how they're not practicing social distancing. We don't feel comfortable with that at all. And so she, had money down that she's going to end up losing a little bit of money, but we just don't feel comfortable with that. But we do feel comfortable, in a nice, safe campground where the 2 of us, and camping sex is awful good too. And so we'll take a camping trip somewhere. Now then, the other thing is I want to make vacation plans with her since we're not going for going to be about 10 days, 10, 11 days where we're going to go to our national parks in Utah, and it's going to be a road trip. Since we're not doing that, then I don't want to just forget about the fact that my girlfriend's taking this vacation time, and so I'll take some vacation with her. We're going to come up with ways that we're going to spend that time, and we'll spend some of it in camping, but not all of it. And we're going to come up with ways that we're going to enjoy some vacation time together. And so we need to get that all planned out. So what about my health and wellness then for this week? Well, I want to meditate daily. I want to go on my 3 walks. I want to take the Allergy Cocktail daily, and I want to do 2 recodes. And the on holds this week, those are just items that I put on hold that I will be working on some other week, but not this week, so I don't go through those in the weekly wrap up. And so that's the weekly wrap up for this week. And I thank you very much. I hope that this was helpful to you. And so I see that we got someone here, and if you have any questions, let me know, or put in the comments if you have any questions about anything. It could be related to anything I spoke about tonight, or it could be related to anything that you've got going on in your life. And so if you have any questions at all, go ahead and ask a question in the comment box. I'll just kind of wait for a minute or two if you do want to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll wrap this up. And I appreciate your being here tonight. And I always appreciate being able to have people that are, I hope that I'm helping you with some of the things that you're working on in your own life by just being transparent in my own life. And one of my long-term goals is that I really want to help ethically and consistently non-monogamous people build businesses that are online like me. And that's why in reality, I'm doing this weekly wrap up and telling you about what I'm doing with my business, because I would like to help 1,000 people who are ethically and consistently non-monogamous. I'd like to help them to not only be sexually liberated and liberate in their life with their relationships and their sex, but I'd also like to help them to be financially liberated so that if they want to go to work at a job, they can do that, but they don't do it because of paycheck. They do it because it's part of what they love to do. And I'd like to be able to take and help 1,000 people then that are liberated financially, so that, yeah, I want to be able to travel with you, and I want to be able to do fun things with you wherever you're from. It could be anywhere in the world, but we could come to see you. And I know one of the mastermind groups that I'm in, that they have it's a network of high income producers. These are people who all make high level 6 and 7 figure incomes in their businesses, in their marketing businesses. And so they got canceled this year, but they typically schedule 4 or 5 trips where, like this year, the first trip was going to be in England, and everybody would go to England because one of them lives there in England, and one of the guys in this mastermind group. And they all thought, hey, it'd be fun to go to England. And so then they just travel around like that, and where people live, and we'd love to do the same thing, but not just for me by myself and my partner's traveling somewhere, but I'd love to take 50, 100, 200, or 1,000 people with me as I travel. Or maybe we'll get on a cruise ship once this pandemic's all done and over, and we take a cruise somewhere. But you've got to be able to liberate yourself with your income to be able to do some of these kinds of things. But otherwise, you're limited to a couple weeks vacation a year. Even when I was self-employed and had a very lucrative business, the most vacation I could really squeeze out in a year is 5 weeks. And I thought I was doing good taking 5 weeks of vacation a year, but life should be a vacation. And so I want to take, and one of my desires longer term is that, like I want to create online 4 or 5 different businesses and different business models that are sustainable, that sure, it may take a little while for you to build, but you can build them low cost. Also, I wanted to be able to take and train, got people in the Philippines that I'm working with, so I want to train them to help ethically and consistently non-monogamous people to build the businesses, just like what I'm doing right now in the process of transitioning the building of my online e-commerce business on my online stores to be where by the time the next 2 months, I hope to be having that all being done with a assistant in the Philippines. And this is all part of where, again, you don't have to work in your business. You can work on your business. There's a difference. When you're working on your business, you have a team of people that are working in your business for you. And so I'm creating those teams now. But part of what I'm doing creating those teams is create teams where they can help people who are ethically and consensually non-monogamous do the same thing. Can you imagine spending $200 a month, less than a car payment, $200 a month for 12 months, and then you would spend, because you've got the team that I've trained, you've got them doing most of the work, but then your involvement is about maybe 3 hours, 5 hours maximum involvement in any given week. And so anywhere between 2 and 5 hours in a week, and you're spending $200 a month, and at the end of a year, then you start making thousands of dollars a month. At the end of 2 years, you're able to make an income that would replace any income that you're earning from a job, up to say like about $6,000 or $8,000. Within 3 years, you could be making within $10,000 to $20,000. And so I want to help people that are ethically and consensually non-monogamous be able to create that. But I've got to do it myself first, and to make sure that I've got programs that I can then have done myself, and I've got programs that I can then help you with in creating the life that you choose and the life that you love the most. And my first step for that is helping you create the life that you love the most by having more sex with more people more often. And then it becomes just a factor of you don't have enough time or you don't have enough help. Well, then you got to either have more time by increasing your income so that you have income coming in through sources that you don't have to spend as much time making that income. Or if it's your health is your challenge, then we've got to turn that around for you. And so we just want to help you in all those areas so that you can have a life that you love, that is increasing constantly the amount of satisfaction and pleasure that you have in your life. So thank you very much again, and I'll be back here next week about 8 o'clock, maybe between 8 and 8:30, just depending upon how squeezed I am on Monday for my time schedule. But I'll try to make them as close as 8 o'clock, and so be back with me again next Monday. Thank you very much.